Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you could join us today because we have a genuinely fascinating deep dive lined up for you.
Yeah, it really is a great one today.
We are jumping into a stack of highly specific, cutting-edge industry materials. Specifically, we're looking at a thought leadership report,
And a detailed analysis piece.
right, titled Agentic AI Transforming ESG for Pharmaceutical Generics. Both of these come to us from Agentics and Eck Ratings. And look, I know exactly what you might be thinking right off the bat. Pharmaceutical generics,
Right.
environmental, social, and governance compliance, artificial intelligence. It sounds like we threw a bunch of corporate buzzwords into a blender,
Yeah.
right, with some very dense regulatory reporting.
It really does sound like a mouthful at first.
But stick with me here, because the core premise we are exploring today is wild. Right now, ESG compliance in the pharma generics industry is having what the materials describe as its 1990s ERP moment.
That is a phenomenal analogy to start with, honestly. If you think back to the 1990s, enterprise resource planning
But
software.
ERPs, yeah.
Right, ERPs. They were just emerging. Before that, massive global companies were somehow managing their finances, their inventory, operations, all with completely disconnected systems.
Like spreadsheets and paper ledgers.
Exactly. Isolated servers, paper ledgers, and a tremendous amount of manual guesswork. The companies that adopted ERP systems early didn't just comply with accounting standards a little bit faster.
No, they got a massive advantage.
A decade-long structural advantage over their competitors because
Right.
they could finally see their entire business in real time.
And the argument here is that ESG data is undergoing that exact same transformation today.
Yes.
It is shifting from being this, dusty boardroom checklist.
A nice-to-have PR exercise.
Yeah, a PR exercise that lives in a PDF somewhere, and it's turning into a mandatory, high-stakes, competitive weapon.
Exactly. The era of sustainability as a voluntary marketing campaign is completely over. And even if you don't work anywhere near the pharmaceutical industry, the lessons we're going to extract today are incredibly relevant to you.
Oh, absolutely.
This is essentially a masterclass in how a business can take massive, crushing regulatory and data burdens.
Just mountains of paperwork.
Right, and completely flip them into operational gold mines. And they're doing this using a specific new wave of technology called Agentic AI.
We are definitely going to break down exactly how that technology works, but first we need to understand the pressure cooker that is forcing this entire industry to change right now.
Right.
Okay, let's unpack this. What is the burning platform driving this massive shift? Like, why now, and why focus on ESG?
Well, there's a perfect storm of three converging pressures that have permanently transformed the landscape, specifically for pharma generics. First, you have regulatory pressure.
Right, the new EU laws.
The EU's Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, or CSRD, it is now law. As of financial year 2024, it became mandatory for large EU companies.
And mid-sized ones are coming up, right?
Entering the scope by financial year 2025, yes. And this isn't a niche regulation that only affects a few mega corporations. A staggering 73% of EU generics firms are now firmly in scope for this mandatory reporting.
Wow, 73%. And just to clarify, the scale of that reporting, it requires full scope 1, 2, and 3 disclosures.
Yeah.
Meaning a company has to track emissions, not just in their own factories, which is hard enough,
Yeah.
but all the way down their entire supply chain.
All the way down and all the way up through the use of their products.
That's massive.
Precisely. You have to account for the carbon footprint of the companies you buy from. And that leads directly to the second pressure, commercial viability.
This is where it gets existential for these businesses, doesn't it?
It really does. Currently, 68% of hospital and public sector procurement tenders now explicitly include ESG scoring in their supplier evaluation criteria.
68%.
Yeah, an EcoVadis silver rating is becoming the absolute minimum threshold for many hospital group purchasing organizations.
Let me pause on that because I want to make sure we understand the gravity of that threshold.
Right.
EcoVadis is a globally recognized sustainability rating platform, right?
Right.
What does it actually mean to get a silver rating? And why is it such a hurdle?
So getting an EcoVadis silver rating means your company places in the top 25% of all companies assessed globally.
Wow. Okay.
It requires submitting immense amounts of verified, audited data across environment, labor, human rights, ethics.
You can't just fake it.
No, it is not something you can just bluff your way through with a well-written policy document. You have to prove it mathematically. So if a hospital network says, we only buy from EcoVadis silver suppliers, and you don't have that rating,
You were instantly locked out of the market.
instantly, you simply cannot bid to supply those hospitals.
So contracts are literally being won and lost today based purely on the sustainability metrics.
Yes, contracts worth millions. And the third pressure is financial and reputational. Global parent groups are making net zero commitments to their shareholders. And they are cascading those strict reporting targets downward to all their subsidiaries. Furthermore, if you want access to green financing or sustainable procurement incentives,
The banks want the data.
the banks and investors now require that verifiable scope 1 through 3 data. Green financing isn't just a buzzword. It often translates to significantly lower interest rates on $100 million loans.
Which brings us to the breaking point. Because the way companies have historically been trying to prove all of this to the banks and the hospitals is, frankly, it's a nightmare.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the traditional way of managing ESG is structurally broken. Consider the benchmark for a mid-sized generics firm right now.
Okay.
They typically spend an average of 450,000 euros annually just on manual ESG reporting.
Just compiling the reports.
Exactly. And that process takes 3 to 6 months per cycle. They are relying on periodic, expensive, consultant-led exercises, or they are using very basic software that essentially just automates the manual entry of data into a spreadsheet.
And in a world where CSRD deadlines are quarterly, and where hospital buyers are demanding real-time transparency, taking half a year and nearly €500,000 to manually compile a static PDF report, that's a fast track to irrelevance.
It is a complete recipe for failure.
Yeah.
The deadlines have already arrived, and the old tools simply cannot scale to meet them.
Enter the tech solution.
Yes.
The materials talk extensively about a maturity gap.
Yeah.
On one side, you have the status quo, the static PDFs, and the massive consulting fees we just talked about.
Right.
On the other side, you have market leaders who have leaped ahead using agentic AI, specifically citing platforms like the Echo Ratings operating system. But my immediate thought as a business leader is, how is this practically different from just firing up ChatGPT?
A lot of people wonder that.
I mean, I can't exactly ask a standard chatbot to optimize a global pharmaceutical supply chain.
You absolutely cannot. And that's the crucial distinction. Traditional software and even basic conversational AI just sits there and waits for a human prompt. Agentic AI refers to a system of specialized goal-directed AI models, they call them agents, that can perceive their environment, reason about incoming data, take independent actions, and learn continuously.
Without a human constantly pulling the levers.
Exactly.
The documentation breaks this down into a 4-layer architecture. Let's deconstruct how this actually works on a technical level, starting with layer 1.
Okay.
Because my first fear with any new enterprise tech is the dreaded rip and replace. Please tell me a company doesn't have to tear out its entire IT infrastructure to use this.
They don't. Layer 1 is the data layer, and the foundational principle is zero rip and replace.
Oh, thank goodness.
The AI system plugs directly into the infrastructure a company already has. It connects via standard APIs, application programming interfaces to existing ERP systems, IoT sensors on the factory floor, supplier portals, billing systems.
So it just acts as a layer on top of your current data, seamlessly pulling what it needs.
Precisely. It doesn't break what's already working.
Okay, that makes sense. So the data is flowing in. Layer 2 is described as the intelligence engine, LLM plus RAG. Now, large language models are everywhere now, but what exactly is RAG and why is it the secret sauce here?
RJ stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation.
Okay.
Let's strip away the jargon, though. An LLM is a powerful brain, but its knowledge is frozen in time based on when it was trained.
Right, like it only knows things up to 2023 or whatever.
Exactly. RA gives that brain real-time access to the most current external data. When a regulatory question arises, the system retrieves the latest, ever-changing EU frameworks.
Or the newest climate data.
Right, the newest IPCC climate pathway data, or updated emissions factors. It reads them instantly and then generates its answer. It ensures the AI is never hallucinating or working with outdated regulations.
That is huge for compliance. Which leads us to layer 3, which is the agent layer.
Yeah.
And I have to say, this completely changed how I view enterprise AI.
It's a paradigm shift.
Instead of just having one massive generic intelligence trying to do everything, the system deploys a hive of over 100 specialized vertical agents.
What's fascinating here is the level of specialization. Think of traditional AI as a brilliant general practitioner. They know a little bit about everything.
Sure.
Agentic AI is like walking into a massive research hospital. You have a chief oncologist, a chief of neurosurgery, a chief of pediatrics. Each AI agent in the system has a PhD-level hyper-focus on just one specific domain.
For example, you have a CSRD reporting agent whose only job is to know that specific EU directive
Mm.
in granular detail.
Yes.
You have a Scope 3 supplier agent that deeply understands the chemistry of active pharmaceutical ingredients. You even have a green chemistry agent.
Exactly. And that brings us to layer 4, which is insight and act. This is the key differentiator from a standard software dashboard.
Because dashboards just show you the data.
Right. These agents don't just generate a colorful chart and tell a human to go fix a problem. They execute prescriptive recommendations.
So they're actually taking action.
They are. They can schedule energy-intensive manufacturing processes based on when the local power grid has the lowest carbon intensity.
Wow.
And they collaborate with each other. The Scope 3 supplier agent will automatically feed its findings directly to the CSRD reporting agent, formatting it perfectly for the audit.
Without a human ever having to copy and paste a spreadsheet.
Never. It is a continuous, automated, and audit-ready ecosystem.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the architecture is brilliant, but we need to talk about the actual financial return on investment, the business case.
Yes, the ROI is critical.
There is a staggering statistic in the data regarding where a pharma manufacturer's emissions actually originate, because you naturally assume it's all pouring out of the giant factories making the pills.
The data tells a very different story.
And to be clear on the terminology here, the sources specifically highlight APIs and excipients.
Right.
APIs are the active pharmaceutical ingredients, the actual drug itself that does the work, and the excipients, those are the inactive binding ingredients, the fillers and coatings that make up the physical bulk of a pill.
Exactly. Chemical manufacturing is a heavy, energy-intensive industry, so the bulk of your carbon problem isn't even inside your own building.
It is sitting in someone else's factory.
Yes.
This is where I have to play the skeptic for a second. The materials claim that by deploying the specialized Scope 3 supplier agent, companies are achieving up to a 30% cut in their Scope 3 emissions within just 12 months.
It's a big claim.
30% in 1 year just by using AI. How does that actually happen on the ground? That sounds like a magical software promise.
It sounds unbelievable until you look at the mechanics of what the agent is actually doing. The Scope 3 supplier agent automatically scores over 100 API and packaging vendors on their ESG performance. It uses both public data and proprietary data fed through the API layer. It calculates the specific emissions intensity for every single supplier, but it doesn't just monitor.
It acts.
It actively flags high-carbon vendors for contract renegotiation. Furthermore, it analyzes global shipping routes in real time. It will recommend shifting a specific shipment from air freight to sea freight.
Oh, that would save a ton of carbon.
Exactly. And it provides the exact carbon cost comparison and the logistical delay implications to the procurement team instantly.
So it's finding the low-hanging fruit across hundreds of suppliers that a human team simply wouldn't have the time to calculate.
Exactly.
And the industry benchmarks back this up. Sandoz, for example, is cited as having cut their reporting time by 50%.
Yep.
But more importantly, they used AI to score over 500 API vendors. Imagine the nightmare of manually scoring 500 different chemical suppliers using spreadsheets.
It would take a team of analysts months. The AI does it instantly.
Teva Pharmaceutical is another major benchmark mentioned.
Yes. They used AI-driven energy management across 38 distinct manufacturing sites. By allowing the AI to optimize facility operations against real-time grid data, they achieved a 23% reduction in energy intensity.
That is massive.
What?
Then there's Dr. Reddy's laboratories. They deployed the green chemistry AI to optimize the solvents they use in research and manufacturing.
Right.
They achieved a 35% reduction in solvents. And here is the fascinating part. They used that reduction to issue Vera-registered carbon credits.
We really should unpack that because it's a massive shift. The AI was focused on optimizing process mass intensity.
PMI. Right.
Yes, PMI, which is a metric that measures how much raw material it takes to manufacture 1 kilogram of the final drug product.
Okay.
By optimizing that chemistry, they reduced their waste so significantly that they qualified for Vera-registered carbon credits.
And Vera is one of the world's leading carbon standard registries.
It is. It means Dr. Reddy's literally turned their R&D waste reduction into a verified, tradable financial asset.
They monetize their efficiency. That's incredible. Finally, Stata used a lifecycle assessment AI, or LCA AI. And LCA traces the environmental impact of a product from cradle to grave.
Right.
Stata used it specifically for their circular packaging program, tracing blister packs and sourcing recyclable alternatives. They cut their packaging waste by 18%.
So when you synthesize all of these benchmarks, the actual ROI bottom line becomes very clear. The estimated annual value creation for a mid-sized generics manufacturer adopting this technology is between 500,000 and over 2 million euros.
And eliminating that 450,000 euro manual reporting cost we talked about earlier, that's just the baseline.
Just the baseline. The real money is found because the AI is uncovering deep operational inefficiencies. It discovers manufacturing facilities burning 15 to 20% more energy than needed.
Or bad shipping routes?
Exactly. It identifies supply chains carrying hundreds of thousands of euros in entirely avoidable logistics and carbon costs.
Okay, so we've established the why and the what. The regulatory platform is burning, the agentic technology exists, and the ROI is heavily proven by the biggest players in the space.
Yes.
But as an operational leader, my immediate thought is that deploying 100 autonomous agents across a global supply chain is going to cause a massive system shock. It sounds like a 5-year implementation nightmare.
That fear of system shock and the pushback from internal employees overwhelmed by new tech, that is exactly what keeps many companies paralyzed in the maturity gap.
I can imagine.
However, the roadmap detailed here explicitly avoids the traditional bloated consultancy model. They emphasize a strict validation-first principle.
So you don't do it all at once.
Right. There are no massive upfront retainers, and
Oh.
you don't shock the system by turning on 100 agents on day one. It is a highly controlled 3-phase rollout where each phase must prove its return on investment before you are allowed to move to the next.
Let's walk through that roadmap because it is surprisingly fast.
Yeah.
Phase 1 is the foundation phase, covering months 1 through 3. What is actually happening inside the company during this time?
In the first 90 days, you severely limit the scope. You only deploy 2 specific agents, the CSRD reporting agent and the manufacturing scope 1 and 2 emissions agent. That is it.
That's keeping it simple.
The goal here is entirely focused on immediate compliance and establishing baseline visibility. The key outcomes are that your CSRD reports are suddenly being generated in under a week, completely audit-ready.
Wow.
You reduce your manual ESG labor hours by 90%, freeing up your team, and you finally get a real-time energy dashboard for your own manufacturing sites.
It essentially pays for itself in the first quarter just by replacing the manual consulting work.
Exactly.
Then you move to phase 2. Optimization. This covers months 4 through 6. Now that your own house is in order, you start looking outward.
Yes. Now you deploy the Scope 3 supplier agent and the hospital logistics agent. This is where you attack that 72% emissions chunk from your supply chain.
And the outcomes here are highly commercial. Your EU hospital tender scorecards are fully prepared and actively updated, ensuring you don't lose those crucial hospital contracts.
Right. You start seeing the initial waves of that 30% Scope 3 cut from supplier renegotiations. And the logistics agent typically finds a 15 to 25% reduction in transportation emissions just by optimizing routes and freight methods.
It's all about optimization at that point.
Yes. And then, and only then, do you enter phase 3, leadership. This is months 7 through 12. You have secured compliance and you have optimized your supply chain.
Now you bring in the heavy hitters.
Now you deploy the highly advanced specialized tools, the lifecycle assessment agent for circular packaging, the green chemistry agent for optimizing your R&D solvents, and the diversity and inclusion agent for your workforce metrics.
The goal in phase 3 is hitting those EcoVadis gold rating targets, achieving full lifecycle coverage across your entire drug portfolio, and really structurally embedding sustainability into the core of your business strategy.
Precise.
So what does this all mean? When we pull back from all the specific AI architecture and pharmaceutical supply chain metrics, what is the core lesson for the listener today?
The universal lesson, whether you manage a pharmaceutical plant, a tech company, or a logistics firm, is that the old paradigm is dead. Mandatory compliance data, these massive reports that governments and institutional buyers are demanding, should never be viewed merely as a sunk cost or a necessary evil.
It's not just a tax on doing business.
Exactly. The data you are now forced to collect contains incredible untapped insights about your operational efficiency. If you capture and analyze that data intelligently, using multi-agent AI systems rather than a tired team of analysts copying and pasting into spreadsheets,
It becomes an advantage.
it transforms from a compliance burden into a direct profit lever. You aren't just reporting on your business anymore, you are optimizing it in real time.
That is such a powerful takeaway to wrap up our deep dive today. The numbers truly speak for themselves. The pharma ESG compliance market alone is projected at $8.2 billion. Agentic AI is actively transforming that billion-dollar burden into a fierce, structural competitive advantage.
It really is.
The generics companies that embrace this 4-layer architecture today are going to absolutely dominate hospital procurement tenders. And the companies that wait, clinging to their static PDFs and their manual consultants, are going to spend the next decade playing an incredibly expensive game of catch-up.
This raises an important question, one that builds directly on the incredible capabilities we've seen these AI agents demonstrate today. Right now, we are looking at individual agentic AI models autonomously scoring suppliers, flagging carbon inefficiencies, and recommending logistics changes entirely on their own to human operators.
Right.
But what happens in just a few years? Imagine the AI agent of a large generics manufacturer autonomously communicating directly with the AI agent of an API supplier. What happens when these machines begin negotiating shared climate goals, establishing dynamic pricing based on energy grids, and executing carbon credit tokenization without any human intervention at all?
Right?
Will the future of sustainable global supply chains be negotiated entirely by machines talking to machines?
Wow. That is a wild, fascinating thought to leave on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. I highly encourage you to look at your own industry today and keep questioning how new technology, like Agentic AI, can flip your biggest regulatory burdens into your greatest operational advantages. Until next time, keep exploring.